Now that I have my system boundary, I'm actually going to use this to clip this data down to my area of interest. So if I zoom out and if I don't clip this data down, you can see how much extra geoprocessing that my computer is going to have to do if I don't clip the data down. And we can just see how long it's taking to just draw that background aerial image. So if I can clip that data down to that little square and I only have to work with the data in that square, you'll see that your computer will be a lot more responsive. So there's two tools that I'm going to use to clip data. And the reason why there's two tools is because there's two data types. The first one is clipping rasters. So let me turn off this land use land coverage and let's turn topography back on. And I'm going to turn the contours off. So I just want to look at just this bare earth DEM, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this huge big thing down just to this little square one here. And I'm going to save it into that new geodatabase that I created. So since this is a raster, I'm going to have to use the spatial analyst tools. And inside of the spatial analyst tools, I'll be using extraction. And inside of extraction, I have something called ClipAndExtractByMask. So if I double click on that, that will open the tool. And then over here on my table of contents, I'll just drag and drop the bare earth inside of the input raster. And then the next one says input raster or feature mask data. So what am I going to use is basically my cookie cutter to cut this out, and that's my system boundary that I defined in my last step. And then where do I want the results to save to? And I'm going to save it into my new geodatabase here. I'll just call it the same thing. You can call it DEM, terrain, you know, whatever makes sense to you. So this is my 2018 bare earth dataset. I'm just going to save it here. And I'll go ahead and click OK. I don't have to worry about spatial projections or anything. It's already set. So I'm just going to click OK. Let that run. And in my case, it said that it failed. So why did it fail? Sometimes it will fail if the file is in use. And it's a really random thing. So to fix this, all you have to do is save, close out ArcGIS, and just reopen it. And I'm checking to see if that is the error in this case. So let me hit save. I'll just go ahead and exit and reopen ArcGIS. Alright, I'm going to try my extraction again. This time I'm going to navigate out to it. So I want to do my bare earth. And my input raster is in a different geodatabase. And I want to output this as bare earth 18. Let's see what happens. Sometimes you just have to shut it down and it has to do with a weird geodatabase lock, like a write protection thing. Don't really know why it happens, but it happens. But anyways, I've got my smaller one here. And because I have my smaller one here now, I'm going to remove the bigger one just so that I can get better performance with this file. So the next one I have is a slope map, and I'm basically going to repeat procedure with my slope map. So let's go ahead and run it with slope map, and I'm going to try dragging and dropping. It may not work. If it doesn't, I'll just do the same thing that I did with the other one where I just navigated to it manually. Looks like it worked that time. And notice that it didn't retain the same symbology as my terrain data did. It looks quite strange. I'm going to remove my old one. When I hit remove, it doesn't delete it in the background, it just removes it from this display here. That's one thing to keep in mind. So it's still in that other geodatabase. So I want to change the symbology of my slope map because it's looking like my other map. So I'll just right click on my slope, go to properties, and then go to symbology. And then over here, there's different ways that you can view this data. So I'm going to just choose classified, and you can decide on how you want your breakdown to be. So right now it's set to 5. And what I did was I just clicked this classify button. And then once this window here opens, it's up to you how you want to break this down. There's different ways that you can do it. So for demo purposes, I'm not being too particular. I'm going to stick to my old breakdown. Maybe this time I'll do something different. I'll do 5. And then, I don't know, maybe 8 here. And then 12. And then I usually leave the very last number as is. And then I'll click OK. And then here you may want to change, the color ramping. So I can click this drop down, and maybe I'll go from a red to green. Where green, it's a much more safer slope, and then red is kind of more dangerous slopes. And you may want to change these long numbers. So you can actually go over here where the label is. And this is what it will display as in the legend. So you probably don't want these long trailing numbers on the end. And since we did this by percentage, you may want to add the percent symbol in here in your labels. Same thing over here. I'm just going to go through each one and just make this, read in a way where it makes more sense. It's always going to go all the way to like 0.1 because this previous one ends exactly at 12. So it has to take one step forward. So it's like 0.0000, like lots of zeros to 1. And then here, we could round this off to like 7. Doesn't need to be exactly perfect. Or if you wanted to, you could say that's a 9. Just to be consistent with the way we did the others. And you can see that this changed. It's probably picking up the edge of the buildings here. So a slope map for this is not too particularly useful. So I want to have a transparency on this. So what I'm going to do is go over here to the display. For transparency, I'll add number 5, click apply, okay. And I can kind of see my terrain map underneath. It's not too terribly important. So I'm going to repeat procedure again, this time with my hill shade. So I'll extract by mask. This may not work too well, but we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work too well, we'll just make a hill shade from scratch. It's not that big of a deal. I'll call it HS for hill shade. And I'll go ahead and click OK and see what happens. That came out okay. Not too terribly interesting since this is a very urbanized space. And it looks very choppy or noisy because remember that it's using LiDAR that's it's spaced 1 meter apart, so it's taking a guess what's going on in between. But this is kind of really helpful to see, where the water could possibly be moving. Obviously not in the center of the street. So I'll go ahead and drag that down here, and I'll just remove my long one from the map. And now I have all of these contours here. So recall that contours is vector based. And I'm probably not going to want all of these contours. I know that my site is pretty flat. If my site was, had a lot of elevation change to it, I may choose these bigger numbers. But what I really want is a 1 foot contour considering how flat this area is, and I just want the stuff that's inside the box. So to clip a shape file, or a vector-based file, I'm going to go over here to Analysis Tools, go to Extract, and I'm going to choose Clip. So I'll just drag and drop that into there. The clip feature on my cookie cutter is the sys BND, and then I'll tell it where I want it to save. And it'll go into my new geodatabase, which I'm going to call contours 1 foot. And click save and click OK. And those are my new contours. So what I'll do is I'll just remove my other ones since I don't need them anymore. And I can again go in here and change the symbology. I don't know, maybe this time I'll go with green. And then in the symbology thing, if it's something like this where it's just a simple single symbol, if you want the legend to say something that makes more sense, you could always say contours 1 foot. And then when you go to make your map, it'll actually show that in the legend. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video for now and do all of these others. I think you've seen how to do one of everything, and let you go ahead and work on yours. So here's my soils data. I just clipped it. Just want to show you something with the symbology. I'm going to right click and go to properties. And right now it's set to single symbol. I'm going to go to categories, and the value field, I'm going to change that to, this is drainage class. It's kind of, here we go, hydrologic group dominant condition. And I'm going to click add all values, and notice I have C and D. And I think before what I had set this to, I usually remove the outline color because it just gets really busy. And I'm going to choose, I think I chose an orange color, like a medium sand. And then for D, choose no color for the outline boundary. I choose kind of a reddish color. And if I click apply, this looks kind of similar to what I had before. The other thing that I did was I added a transparency so that I could overlay this map on top of other maps, which can be helpful. And then the other values, I'm guessing that these are probably water, sometimes water bodies. But since I don't have any other values here, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But anyways, I wanted to show you a different way to use the symbology. There's different categories in there. So this one I used unique values. For the hydrology section, what I did here is I didn't make 2 of these. What I did, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and I'm going to remove this hillshade. Is all I did was I went here and I copied this. You can actually copy layers, and then you can paste them into groups. I'm going to paste this layer here, drag it to the bottom like how it was before. And then the other thing I did was I copied hillshade and I pasted it into here as well. And I think I had it here. And if I turn it on, it doesn't have a transparency set, so I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick. So I'm in the display tab, and that helps make that read a little bit better. So now I'm over here up to my drainage lines, and for my drainage lines I'm probably not going to want to keep the ones that don't really, cross over into my site. And all of this stuff down here I'm definitely not going to want to transfer over, so all I'm going to do with these things, I'm just going to remove them from my layer. And then here, this is going to be dependent upon what you chose. Some of these may or may not be relevant to what you need. So, extract by mask the ones you need and don't do the ones you don't need because it obviously doesn't cross into your site. And then remove the ones you don't need.